Hello and welcome to my tutorial How to create art with free tools. Part 2. Concept with Adobe Sketch and Photopea. In part 2 of this tutorial we will look into Adobe Sketch and how to come up with some concept ideas, and later we will jump into Photopea to come up with a photobashed version of our concept. Okay, so let's jump right in. I usually start my projects with some brainstorming. So as you can see here, I have created some ideas and then I'm collecting images from video games, from Google, from ArtStation, from all over the web to fill and create some references to the topics that I have come up with. So as you can see, I have multiple pages of that. I'm collecting ideas and basically trying to come up with themes that resonate with me. So for this project I was very keen on trying something with a cave, and I'm trying to surround that theme with references. I wanted it to be made out of wood in the beginning. I wanted to have some colorful elements, some fog and some lighting. But before I settle on that idea, I go into a tool called Adobe Sketch. It's available for phones, and with the touchscreen you can create some watercolor paintings, and the watercolor itself then continues to flow around the picture, creating these happy accidents that can be very inspiring as well. For example, here you can see I created just a stroke, but then in the fringes of the watercolor it nearly looks like a landscape already. So this is a very inspiring process that I'm trying to do. And again, it really helped me nailing down what I really want to do and discarding all the other ideas. Also, I put some color references at the bottom of things I want to experiment with, but ultimately that cave idea stuck with me and I really wanted to give it a try. So I go to a website called photopea.com. It's like a free online Photoshop. It's ad-based. I just put my references on the right side of the screen here, and I start setting up some rule of thirds basically. So I'm creating new guides at 33 and 66% to just give me a rough idea on the composition of my image. So that's a very simple trick I usually do at the start of my projects. Just changing the opacity down a little bit so it's not too much in my way, and then using really big brushes and brush strokes to just generate some lighting and some mood. It's really very simple. I'm not a great concept artist. I'm just trying to put some whites and some blacks with a low opacity to create some vignetting and start getting a little bit of a feeling on the mood that I want to have. So obviously this is set in a cave, so I want the surroundings of that image to be very dark, and the focus of attention, I want this to be in the center. But I'm trying to respect the rule of thirds at the same time and create some composition and caves that leads the eye from one bright area to the next bright area. Since the opacity of the brush is so low, I can just keep tweaking, and again, as you can see, it doesn't require a lot of artistic skills to come up with an image like that. But it will be very helpful as a base for the photo bashing later in terms of how I want the light and the center of attention to be in that image. So I'm having a very large white opening in the top left, and then on the top right I'm having a smaller one, and I'm just playing around with the brush until I get something that gets a little bit closer to what I want in terms of lighting. So as you can see, I'm trying to connect these areas with a line. I'm then going into Google and looking for some reference images that I can use. So it's a simple image search. I just copy the image and paste it directly into the other tab of my browser on photopea.com. I'm lowering the opacity and just trying to line up the openings of the cave with the openings that I have put on my base. So I'm not looking for the whole image to match. In this case, I'm just trying to match the top left opening of the cave to be a little bit closer to the image, and same thing for the top right thing. So I can use the warp tool to really strongly distort that image around to just fit my needs. I don't need it to be looking very realistic. I just want the rough shapes in the right place to support my image. As you can see, the root of thirds are still turned on. I can still see the base beneath that image, and by just adjusting the handles in the warp tool, I'm slowly trying to just push everything into the right place. So I'm accepting this. This is a good start. Of course, there's lots of elements that I don't want. So I'm going deeper into more references that I can now start to overlay with the existing base image that I have. And again, I'm using transform tools to just roughly match the locations of the openings. I'm increasing the opacity back, and I'll click the mask button at the bottom of the screen, which is unfortunately cut off in this video, to generate a mask layer, and with a black dark brush I can now softly basically erase away the parts of the image that I do not want. And then I move on to just continue with references to fill the rest of my screen. So this one is really big, so I need to scale it down first. Lowering the opacity. It doesn't fit quite right because there's not much space at the top of that image, but it gives me a very good reference of how the opening looks. And the transition from the opening into the cave, there's this vertical thing with the bushes. It's a reference that I like a lot, so I'm trying to make that work now. Going back and forth between the layers to just see what I'm really working on, to isolate some stuff, and then just picking by filling the mask layer completely black first, and now using a white brush to reveal the parts of the images that I do like, slowly gives me a better feeling of what I want to have. And it's just a back and forth. Sometimes I reveal stuff that I don't like, and then I just switch with the X button between black and white to reveal and hide until I'm happy with the selection of image parts. And then it's rinse and repeat. It's just finding more references, trying to integrate them better. It gets a little bit tricky with the existing layers, so be very careful that you set your opacity back to 100 before you move on. And now, since I have that weird area at the top of my image where it's just cut off, I'm trying to fill that with this reference image. Again, creating a mask, filling it with black, and then using a white brush to slowly reveal the parts of that invisible image. There's some weird overlapping happening here. It seems to be like a layer that is shining through. So that was just the opacity not being at 100%. Okay, this is getting really close to the base that I had, so I can start adding some other elements. I wanted a driftwood deer in this cave, so I'm just trying to find a good reference for that. This one seems good, and I'm just pasting it with Ctrl V. But now I need to separate the driftwood deer from the background. So I'm using the quick selection tool. Doesn't really give me a very good result here, but at least it's a base. So I select, click the mask button, and now again with black and white brushes I'm revealing and hiding what I want to see or not see about that image. So I'm bringing back the legs of the deer that I cut off, and the antlers, of course. And then I'm using a black brush again to just hide the surroundings better. And this can be done very rough. This is just about ideas and not about the details. We will work on the details in 3D later on. So this is a stage where I like to move fast and not get hung up on perfect quality. Usually during that process I change my mind a lot because I can get inspired by the references and I can get new ideas while positioning some stuff. So I really try not to spend too much time on perfect execution at this stage. Again, referencing the rule of thirds really helps me remembering where I want my composition to be. So this deer is floating now because I want it better located in the composition. So I'm just going back to my background layer and trying to match the floor to be a bit higher in that image. And again, that's just warping and transformation tools. So I really like that river there, but first I would like to have an abstract version of a deer to face the driftwood version of the deer. So it's like the deer should look into a mirror or into a portal and see like a different version of itself. So I'm just trying to, there's lots of good ideas on Google already. I'm just trying to find something that has a little bit of perspective. And that image down here seems to be like exactly what I want. Again, I start with the quick selection tool. This time it worked much better, and click the mask button to separate it from its background. And then I'm transforming and warping it into position. I'm also trying to position that one in the rule of thirds, but as you can see, it doesn't really make a lot of sense with the current composition that I have. So I need to change my plan a little bit here. I also don't want it to be too close to this cave entrance because it's very bright already, and the cave entrance is getting a lot of attention already. So I'm trying to move things again, move the cave entrance a little bit out of the way to put more focus on this abstract deer as well. There's this river. I would like the river to flow in between the deers. So again, I'm going back to my cave search and just try to find an image where the river is more exposed. Again, pasting it with Ctrl V, just from the browser into the next browser tab. And this image doesn't really have the right perspective either, so I need to do a lot of transformation here. Again, I filled it with the mask layer in black, and I'm slowly revealing the parts of the image that I do want to keep. And again, this doesn't look very convincing, but it doesn't need to be. This is just about how I want my ideas to be shown. And I'm realizing that this river is not really visible a lot. And it's also struggling a little bit with the composition, especially the cave entrance is still in the way somehow. So I'm trying to shift some things around. So I'm just using a color here to very simply indicate that I want this to be a river later on, because it wasn't very clear to me. Especially when you zoom out later in that image, it will be very hard to see the small details. So this is really just for me to remember where I want water versus where I want grass. And yeah, that looks pretty good already. I think we can start putting some additional effects now. So I want this rainbow / lens flare in that image as well. I want it to look like a lens flare, but at the same time behave differently in terms of shape. Because I want this to look like a portal as well, like the mirror or like the portal that is separating these two deers. And now I'm just trying to somehow match it into the cave in between these two deers. I need to reorder the layering, so the driftwood deer is in front. And then I'm just using hue saturation to adjust the surroundings a little bit. The whole image is very bright. That's something I didn't intend to. I usually want the surroundings, the edges and borders of the image to be darker. So I'm just selecting all the layers that I referenced from and make them a little bit darker to make the deers stand out. I'm putting a colorize hue saturation filter on the driftwood deer to make it a little bit more colorful. And I'm shifting the hue of the abstract deer to something more blue, purple, greenish, a little bit like a normal map rendering would look. And this is referencing from the brainstorming I did before. And I'm taking my base and reordering it to the top of the stack. Again, this is to push the borders and edges of the image a little bit darker. And then I'm using a brush and adding to that as well. Alright, this looks pretty good. I think this is nearly ready for export. I just try to mute the colors a little bit more. And then I save it as a PSD. I hope to see you in part 3, Procedural Modeling with Houdini.